Hi everyone, we're just going to wait for a few more people to join, but thank you for waiting. For anyone that's just joined, we're just going to give it till 5 past to wait for a few more people to get logged on, and then we'll get started. But thank you for waiting. Hi everyone, I think we'll get started now as we've got quite a few numbers and I'm conscious of keeping you all waiting. So my name is Hannah and some of you may have spoken to me before over the last couple of years. I just wanted to say a big welcome to this City and Guilds T-Level Provider Approval webinar. This webinar is one of two and it's going to give you an overview of the approval process. Please make sure that someone in your centre does sign up for the second webinar on the 16th of February and that's 10 till 11:30. They are covering slightly different areas and it follows on from this one, so it's not just the same webinar repeated. So yeah, we're gonna get started now. Can I just mention, if anyone can't see the slides or anyone's having any issues viewing them, please do write in the chat box, but otherwise I'm gonna get going. So as I said, my name is Hannah McArdle and I am the quality team leader here at City and Guilds, focusing mainly on T-levels. I'm just going to quickly let the panelists introduce themselves. So I'll start with Maureen.
Hi, my name is Maureen Frew. I'm one of the quality executives on the quality delivery team looking after T-levels.
And my name's Laura Hartley. I'm also a quality executive for the quality delivery team focusing on T-levels.
Hi, I'm Jo Whittle. I'm one of the quality administrators on the quality delivery team for T-levels.
Thanks everyone. So as Jo mentioned, she is a quality administrator on the team and she's also going to be supporting us today if we have any technical issues and also to pick out any questions that can be answered in the chat area as we go. So before we start, just a few standard formalities for you all. So a few of you on here may be familiar with GoToWebinar platform, but if you're not, you can send your questions in via the question box. This is either going to be on the right-hand panel of your screen or along the bottom, depending on the device and version you're using. So we have selected to keep all attendees muted throughout, but we are going to have a space for a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We may also occasionally stop at certain parts to answer questions so they don't build up at the end. And we can also reply to some in the question box area. So if you have any queries that are specific to your centre, can we just ask that you instead email these to technicals.quality@cityandguilds.com or give us a call. We're also going to put together a document with all the questions that we didn't manage to answer on it and send that out to you all after the webinar. So a recording of this webinar will be available on our website shortly afterwards, and you'll get an email tomorrow with a link to the recording. If you don't receive this, please do let us know and we'll make sure that gets sent to you. I'm also going to add these slides from the webinar to our website, so please feel free to download these and use them for support over the next few months. But I'm going to hand over to Maureen now, and she's going to take you through today's agenda.
Thank you, Hannah. So good morning and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at the following topics during the webinar. So we're going to cover some background information about T-levels and the application process. We're going to look at the resources available to support you, both available on the website and through the teams and personnel that will be available to help you. We will look at the approval timeline and the routes that you'll follow towards your provider approval and qualification approval. We will touch on how to complete your application and we will look at the next steps once you submit your application. Now, the aim of this webinar is to ensure that all eligible providers for this year have all the information they need and understand how the approval process will work this year so you can start to prepare what's needed. We are aware that some of you may already have gone through the approvals process, either with us or with another awarding organisation. So in this case, this will act as a refresher and update you on any changes to the process. I do want to be clear, however, that we are the quality team. We are not qualifications experts. So we won't be covering things like industry-specific content, how to deliver the qualifications, any specific details regarding resources or the core or occupational specialism assessment content, or providing any information about the industry placement. Now, as mentioned, this is the first of two approval webinars. In this one, we're looking at the general approach, the timelines, what forms you're going to be filling out, etc. The second webinar, which will be held next month on the 16th of February, We'll support you further on preparing for your provider or qualification approval activity. And it'll look more detail on completing the application and uploading the evidence. Now, these webinars will be particularly useful for you if it's your first time obtaining approval for T-level technical qualifications with City and Guilds, but we would still recommend you attend if you're submitting an extension or have applied with other awarding organisations, just to make sure you're up to date in the latest processes here. You can find the registration link for the second webinar on the City and Guilds website if you look under T-levels and events and webinars, or again, you can drop us an email at technicals.quality@cityandguilds.com if you'd like the webinar invite resending. If you do need to email us or contact us at anything, we will put full contact details up at the end of the webinar, so if you don't manage to catch it just now, don't worry about it. So I'm going to get started, and the first thing we're going to do is a quick refresher regarding the T-level programme and the technical qualifications being delivered by City and Guilds. So this is just a basic breakdown. As mentioned, anything qualification specific won't be covered in this webinar. Now, as we said, some of you will be new to T-levels and some of you will be here for a refresher before applying for further qualifications. Either way, I'm going to start with a recap over what a T-level is, so we're all starting from the same point. T-levels are a 2-year programme choice that follows GCSEs and runs alongside apprenticeships and A-levels. They have been developed in collaboration with employers and businesses to ensure that the content prepares learners for the world of work and meets industry needs, which is even more crucial at the moment. In terms of UCAS application points, if a student wants to go on into further education, a T-level is equivalent to 3 A-levels. Now, T-levels are only available in England, so if you've accidentally joined from either Scotland or Wales, you're welcome to stay, but please be aware these qualifications are not available in your area. Now, the T-level programme includes the 2 following compulsory areas. It includes a technical qualification, which includes core theory, concepts and skills for the industry area, and is made up of a core component and an occupational specialism. Overall, this makes up approximately 80% in total of the qualification and is classroom-based. You then have an industry placement with an employer, which makes up the remaining 20%. Please be aware, learners are not responsible for finding their own industry placement. This is responsibility of you as the provider. Now, during this webinar and going on with the T-level process, you will hear some abbreviations while we're discussing them. And that includes things like TQ for technical qualification, ESP for the employer set project, which alongside 2 theory exams makes up the core component of the qualification, OS for occupational specialism, TQA for technical qualification advisors who will guide and support you through the application process, and UKPRN, which is your overall provider number. It's 8 digits and starts with 10. This is distinct from your centre number. The centre number is unique to each individual campus, but your provider number may cover a number of different centres within that. I will also note that while there is a requirement for Maths and English GCSE or functional skills as part of the T-level, these have recently been relaxed and you can find out more details about that on the website. Hannah?
Perfect, thank you, Maureen. So in terms of approval, it is only the technical qualification aspect that City and Guilds are responsible for, not the industry placement. So we do ask about the industry placement on your application form, just to confirm that you've covered all risk assessments. However, unfortunately, we are not able to support you in finding your industry placement. So the technical qualification consists of the core elements and the occupational specialisms. It's this qualification that we'll be focusing on today for approval. So T-levels are split into routes, pathways, and occupational specialisms. Routes are the overall industry areas, pathways are the sub-industries within these, and the occupational specialisms allow learners to specialise their learning further. Although the OSs aren't taught until year 2, we do ask that you do try and book these and register them as soon as possible. So the contract that City and Guilds has been awarded by Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, or you may know them as IFATE, and will be available this year are on-site construction and building service engineering. So these fall into the construction route. management administration, which falls into the business and administration route, design and development for engineering, maintenance, installation and repair for engineering, and engineering, manufacturing, processing and control, and those three all fall under the engineering route. And new to this year, we have agriculture, land management and production, which falls under the agriculture, environment and animal care route. So the first route we're going to look at is management and administration, as this is probably, to be honest, the most straightforward example. So there's only one pathway within this route, and that is the management administration, with the qualification number 871501. Within that, there are 3 occupational specialisms. That is business improvement, team leadership and management, and business support. So when applying for this qualification, you will apply for the core pathway and will then choose 1, 2 or 3 of the OSs for delivery, depending on the skills and priorities within your centre. So as you see, you have the core pathway and then you select the occupational specialisms for your second year of delivery. As I said earlier, we do ask that you select the OS when originally registering your learners for the appropriate technical qualification. So as a provider, you can deliver more than one of these OSs. You may find this means you require more than one TQA, as occasionally they do specialise in different areas. However, with management administration, this is less likely. If you were to apply selecting multiple specialisms, and for example, you said on your application form, we're going to have 40 learners on the core pathway, then the occupational specialisms should also add up to those 40 learners. So it could be that you've got 30 on business improvement, 10 on business support, but either way, it needs to add up correctly. But we'll go further into learner volume in the second webinar in February. But for now, Maureen is going to take a little bit of a look at the engineering and manufacturing route.
Thank you, Hannah. Now, the next route we're going to look at is engineering and manufacturing. And this has 3 separate pathways, although they do share a core component. When you're looking on the website for resources, the core elements of the pathway will sit under the 8730 suite. And each group of occupational specialisms each pathway will have their own subsuites. So the first one we're looking at is 873012, which is maintenance, installation and repair for engineering and manufacturing. These occupational specialisms can be found under 8712, 8712 and consist of mechanical, mechatronic, electrical and electronic, control and instrumentation, and light and electrical vehicle. So if you pick this pathway, your learner would then pick one of these specialisms to further refine their learning. The next pathway is 873013, which is engineering, manufacturing, processing and control. These specialisms can be found under 8713 and are fitting and assembly technologies, machining and toolmaking technologies, composite manufacturing technologies, and fabrication and welding technologies. And the final engineering and manufacturing pathway, 873014, is design and development for engineering and manufacturing. And the 8714 group of occupational specialisms consist of mechanical engineering, electrical and electronic engineering, control and instrumentation engineering, and structural engineering. So like I say, they have the common core and then specialise further as you go. Laura is now going to take you through the construction routes.
Thank you, Maureen. So there are 2 pathways for the construction route. The first one being the 871130, and that is on-site construction. For this pathway, we do have 4 occupational specialisms, these being bricklaying, carpentry and joinery, painting and decorating, and plastering. Within the construction route, candidates can also look at the 871030 building service engineering for construction pathway. Now, this pathway does come under the construction route. Several of the occupational specialisms are like any others with one single option. So the electrical and electronic equipment engineering, electrotechnical engineering, gas engineering, and protection systems engineering. But for 3 of the other options, these are actually dual specialisms. So heating, engineering and ventilation, plumbing and heating engineering, refrigeration engineering and aircon engineering. So the candidates for these options would complete the same core exams and employer set project as the single specialisms, but within their second year, they would be required to complete 2 occupational specialism assignments. I just want to remind you, if you do have candidates choosing one of these dual specialisms, they would be required to be booked onto both assignments for that specialism. And finally, new for delivery this year, Hannah is going to talk you through the agriculture, environment and animal care route.
Thanks, Laura. Yep, so as Laura mentioned, we're going to look at the agriculture, land management and production pathway. So the route itself is agriculture, environment and animal care. However, animal care has currently been delayed, so this year it will just be the agriculture, land management and production that you can apply for. So with this one, it's a little bit different. There is a common core, which is delivered across all 4 pathways. Then there's also 4 core pathways. So that's crop, woodland and horticulture, land-based engineering, livestock management and forestry. There are also plans for habitat management as a pathway in the future. However, these are currently under review. So you will see with the land-based engineering, underneath that, there is an OS land-based engineering. For livestock management, there is livestock production. And for forestry, there is forestry. So you kind of have to choose those 3 for those. However, we're going to look a little bit closer at the crop, woodland and horticulture pathway. And the reason for that is this one has 4 specialisms sat underneath it. So those 4 specialisms are crop production, ornamental and environmental horticulture and landscaping, tree, woodland management and maintenance, and again, another tree, woodland management and maintenance, but that one sits under forestry. So that one is slightly different. So you've got those 2 different options. And with these, you just pick one of the occupational specialisms. Please can we ask that care is taken when completing the application form that you can select the correct OS for the pathways you have chosen. I do realise this one is a little bit more complicated, so please do feel free to ask questions or give us an email or a phone call. So before we continue, I'm just going to check in with Jo if there's any questions at this point.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. There's one regarding the application for the approval for the route and the occupational specialism. Do they have to apply for those separately, or does the approval for the route cover both?
So essentially, you're more applying for the pathway than you are the route. So when you apply for, let's say, on-site construction, you would also have to put the occupational specialisms on the same form. So yeah, you apply for the specialisms with the pathway. However, if you applied for on-site construction and bricklaying as a specialism, and then a month later you also wanted to add carpentry and joinery to that, you would just send an application form in purely for the carpentry and joinery.
That's lovely, thanks, Hannah. And then another one regarding a provider that may have multiple sites. Do they need to complete an application form per site?
So it depends really. So basically, it's all about the UKPRN. So if you have the same UKPRN across several sites, we only need 1 application form. However, you'll notice on the application form, it asks you to state which centres you're going to be delivering at. We'd need you to list all centres. If you find out in a month's time that another centre in your group is wanting to deliver it, just send us an email and let us know. But the reason for this is they wouldn't be set up to register learners unless we knew you were delivering there. However, if you have different UKPRNs, it would be different application forms. So it all comes down to that. If you're not sure about your UKPRN or what sits under it, please do get in touch with us and we can check that for you.
That's perfect. Thanks, Hannah.
No worries. Am I right to move on, Jo?
That's great. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'm just going to move on to look at the City and Guilds team. So we basically have 3 groups of staff available to support your applications. So we have us here in the quality delivery team, and we are risk-based. We have the industry-specific technical advisors, and we have the TQAs. So as mentioned again, that is me there in the top middle. My name is Hannah McArdle, and I'm a quality team leader in quality delivery. To the left of me there is Jamie Butcher. He is my manager, so he is a quality manager working on T-levels. To the right and on the row underneath is all our executives on T-levels. So we have Maureen Frew and Laura Hartley, who are on the webinar today. We have Jenny Kitchen and Michelle Graham, who get the job of joining me on February's webinar. We have Jo Whittle as a quality administrator, who is also on the webinar today. We have Halima Maroof as a quality administrator. She's currently on maternity leave, so you may not speak to her for a while. And we have Cherry Fly as a quality administrator. So all of us focus purely on T-levels. You've probably spoken to a few of us before, so you've probably heard our voice. But yeah, that is us as a team. And I'm now going to hand over to Laura, and she's going to talk you through our technical advisors.
Thanks, Hannah. So outside of the quality team, technical advisors have a wealth of experience in both industry and delivery of education at various levels. They are able to support providers in the delivery of products and services from City and Guilds. So the technical advisors involved in T-level qualifications are as follows. We have Sarah Cox being supported by Anne Rogers for land, Sam Ashman for engineering, Paul Brown for construction, Rob Mallander for building service engineering or BSE, Karen Egan and Dom Green for management and administration, and Alison Whittle and Jill Hanson for post 16. So the contact details for technical advisors are available on our website should you need to contact them. And as well as technical advisors, you will be supported closely by technical qualification associates or TQAs. So TQAs will be allocated to you as a provider to support you through the approval process from start to finish. They will support providers by giving advice and guidance, and this will usually be industry specific. I will mention if you do have, you may have several TQAs involved if you are requesting approval to deliver several different qualifications. So TQAs will review any approval applications, including any evidence, as well as carrying out approval visits and support activities. Now, depending on the qualification itself, this may be in person or it may be remote. They will conduct and document quality assurance, advisory support visits, and system activities. TQAs will support the training and development of both new and existing providers. So following your approval, the TQA along with TAs will still be approachable should you require any support or have any technical queries after. They'll also be able to deliver and or support with training and standardisation activities, but please be aware that this is available on request only and may be chargeable. Now, your TQAs will continue to develop and maintain their knowledge to enable support to be given to providers in their industry from both an occupational and quality assurance aspect of the qualification. City and Guilds has other sources of information available for both new and existing providers to utilise. The City and Guilds website is a fantastic source of information, so I would highly recommend having a look through this, but here's a few main places to have a look. The Resource Hub will be one of your main locations to find information, and this can be accessed by selecting T-levels from the tabs across the top of the main page of the City and Guilds website. You would then select Resource Hub, and on this page you'll see many expandable headings filled with supporting documents such as approval forms and quality assurance documents, links to qualification pages, which we will look at in a moment, the contact update form, the T-level welcome packs and key date specifications, a range of teaching and learning resources, published fees for each technical qualification, curriculum delivery planners, tutor resources including textbook samples, and a communications archive where you can find all previous e-bulletins and newsletters. More generic information is also available on the Centre Document Library, which can be found via Centre Quick Links from the City and Guilds homepage. And if you do offer any other City and Guilds qualifications, hopefully you should be familiar with the website, but if not, please do take a little bit of time just to have a look through. So as I mentioned, the qualification pages will give you information specific to each individual qualification. These can be located on the T-level section of our website or by searching the 4-digit code in the search bar at the top right of the page. So the qualification page itself will give you 2 tabs to choose from. The information tab, which will give you an overview of the qualification, and documents, which is where you will find things such as sample assessment materials for the Employer Set project, core exams and occupational specialisms, guide standard exemplification materials or GSEMs for the occupational specialisms, and employer review documents. So as the 8717 Agriculture, Land Management and Production qualification is new for this year, the documentation for this qualification is still being reviewed. I would request that you check back periodically if you are looking to apply and deliver the qualification this year, but communications will be sent out to update you once that is available. I'm now going to hand you over to Maureen, who will take you through the approval timeline in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Laura. So we've got a couple of slides to go through looking at the timeline. This first one is the overview of the process from start to finish. So it runs from January up until starting to deliver in September 23. From now until the application forms go live on the 27th of February, we will be engaging with eligible providers such as yourself. Things like these webinars and things like some enhanced support that we can offer you to help getting things prepared to begin with. The application forms and relevant supporting documents are also now available on the website, so you can start reviewing and preparing your application and get in touch with us with any queries that you might have. Please remember though, you cannot submit these applications until the approval window opens. We will not be able to look at them until that point. And if you're an existing City and Guilds provider for other qualifications, it's important to note that T-level provider approval is different to and separate from any other centre approval you may have completed, and you cannot use the same application through Walled Garden to apply for T-levels as you would do for other qualifications. As I said, the approval window opens this year on Monday the 27th of February. Once you then submit your application and we receive it, Quality Delivery will review it and confirm we can accept it before we begin processing it. And we aim to have your application completed within 30 working days. The closing date for applications this year is the 23rd of June, and we will not be able to accept any applications submitted beyond this date, although support will continue for existing applications. We would ask you to get the applications submitted to us as soon as you feel that you're ready, rather than waiting until the last minute, as we will need to be in contact with you while the application is being processed, and we know that this can be harder over school holidays. Please note, most applications will generate an action plan, and your final approval is subject to this action plan being completed. If your action plan is not completed in time for September 2023 delivery, you will not be fully approved and therefore may be at risk of not being able to deliver. Just going to drill down on a couple of points. So I mentioned enhanced support. This is available now, and it will allow our TQAs to provide informal support and guidance and advice around all aspects of approval, including looking at things like the relevant policies and process and procedures, explaining the approval criteria, and discussing various resource requirements. If you feel you would benefit from this, please contact us and we'll be able to put you in touch with a TQA to arrange this. Once you submit your application during the application window, as I said, Quality Delivery will review this, make sure that there's no issues prior to accepting the application. That could be things like making sure you've got all the correct centre numbers on there if you want to deliver across multiple centres, making sure that you've got things like the correct occupational specialisms selected for the core pathways that you're delivering, any little bits and pieces that might make things not go as smoothly. If we do find any issues, we'll contact you and get these straightened out before we accept the application. We will be looking for you to provide evidence which will be uploaded via our secure document portal. You'll be issued a login to this portal, and any evidence and documentation, both from yourselves and from us, will be stored on here. You will have support and a visit from your TQA. They will be in contact with you once we accept the application in order to arrange this. Once they have completed their activities, they will send us a report which we will review, and we will let you know the outcome of the application by email within 30 working days. any relevant documentation that goes alongside that email giving you your outcome will be uploaded to your document portal. Finally, we offer post-approval and support into the delivery period. A lot of this will be looking at making sure your action plan is fulfilled and getting you started with your delivery. You can also request support such as standardisation sessions, but please be aware that there may be a charge for this. So a few more step-by-steps. You'll complete the form, which is a self-assessment style application, submit it by email. The TQA will be in touch within 5 working days to arrange any activities with you. You'll be in touch with your TQA throughout the whole application period, and they will arrange any necessary approval and support activities. As mentioned above, you may have several TQAs involved in your approval application, depending which combination of qualifications you have applied for. If you have applied for full provider approval, then there'll be one TQA who will look at the full application, including any generic, i.e. non-qualification specific areas. They will also look at the qualification that they specialise in. If you have applied for multiple routes within a full provider approval or within an extension application, you will have a TQA per route depending on what they specialise in. And if you've applied for multiple occupational specialisms within a pathway, you may find you have one TQA completing the application supported by secondary TQA. So for example, if you apply for on-site construction and you want to include the painting and the plastering occupational specialisms, you may have one TQA looking at the core and the painting elements, supported by second TQA who specialises in plastering. I said, we ask that you don't rush the applications, but also please don't leave them to the last minute, because remember, we need to contact people following submission, so ensure that contacts are available over summer. So for example, if you submitted in the last week of the deadline in June, the quality team and your TQA will need to be in regular contact with you throughout the next 30 working days, which takes you across July and into August. People are off on holiday, schools are closed. We need to be able to get hold of you to make sure we can get your application completed in a timely manner. So I'm going to hand over to Hannah now, who's going to look at the routes to approval and the application process itself.
Thanks, Maureen. So now that we've looked at the support available, we're going to look at the actual application process itself. So depending on your current position, depends on how you approach the application. So all providers start off as an eligible provider. So if you are a completely new customer to City and Guilds and you don't deliver any qualification with us, so for example, you don't deliver functional skills, by going through the full provider approval for T-levels, you actually skip our normal centre approval process, which typically costs £2,500. So if you become a full provider approval, you are instantly a City and Guilds centre. You may already have centre approval with us for another qualification, so let's say a technical qualification, but unless you are delivering a City and Guilds T-level, you need to go through the full provider approval form. Regardless of whether you need full or extension approval, you will need to submit an application form and gain approval before delivering any T-level with us. So as you can see on the slide there is the TLA1 application form and the TLA2. The TLA1 is needed if you have delivered if you have never delivered a T-level with City and Guilds. Even if you have T-levels with another awarding organisation, or you deliver different qualifications to City and Guilds, you would still need full provider approval. The TLA2, however, is our extension application form, and this should only be used when you already have approval to deliver one or more of our T-levels. You would use this form to apply for an additional T-level pathway, or perhaps another occupational specialism for a pathway that you already have approval for. Please note, if you have gained approval to deliver a T-level with City and Guilds in the last 2 years, and you have continuously deferred the qualification in those 2 years, you will need to go through the approval process again. There's 2 ways this could have happened. So you could have applied for on-site construction and BSc in 2021. You could have deferred on-site construction for 2 years, but delivered BSc. in which case we'd need you to submit an extension application for on-site construction if you now want to start it up again, and that's because you haven't delivered it for 2 years. However, if you only got approved for on-site construction and you deferred that for 2 years from 2021, because this is your only T-level and you have not delivered it, you would need to go through the full provider approval again. But if you have any questions about that, please do give us a call and we can have a chat through that with you. So we're going to look through the forms in further detail as the webinar goes on. And as we said, please do feel free to type questions in the chat box and we'll offer support where we can. So you may find if you're doing a full provider approval form that you want to put several qualifications on one TLA1 form and just get them all over with at once. So that's not a problem. What we would do is pick one of those T-levels to be your full provider approval, and the TQA allocated to that particular one would also check things such as your general centre documents like your policies, your procedures, etc. However, for all the other qualifications, the TQAs allocated to those would just simply focus on the qualification itself. Alternatively, you could stagger your applications when submitting a full approval. So this would mean originally submitting your TLA1. So for example, in the example above, you may submit this in March for approval on management and administration. And then in April, you might decide to submit a TLA2 extension form to deliver on-site construction. And then in May, another TLA2 to deliver building service engineering. As mentioned in the question earlier, that was quite a good question. So as we said, your occupational specialisms for these qualifications would be on that form as well. Whichever way you do it, technically the approval process is still the same and it doesn't really make a difference to us. It's more what you're comfortable with. We did find last year a lot of providers found it a lot of work to put them all on one form. It was quite stressful to gather all that evidence and have all the TQAs because, I mean, they've all got to be approved within 30 working days. So if you're applying for 4 qualifications, we're going to be sending 4 TQAs to your centre within 30 working days, which could be quite overwhelming, especially when we ask to meet exam contacts and quality contacts. So sometimes you may find staggering it a little bit easier, but at the end of the day, it's more what suits you because it doesn't really make a massive difference to us. So just having a little bit of a look at the similarities and differences between a full approval and an extension approval. To put it quite bluntly, the main difference is simply that the full approval needs more from you, just because we sort of class you as being completely new to us at that point. So both start with you submitting the application and being given access to the Serval portal, which is where you can upload any required evidence, which we will talk about shortly. But for full approval, there's also your overall centre documents that will need to be reviewed. This step is not as necessary for an extension approval, although we do ask that you keep us up to date during the year about any significant changes. I did see a question in the chat asking if there's new members of staff, how to let us know. Please do just contact us straight away in the quality team. And what we will do is we'll arrange for your approval TQA to look through the CV and check that's okay. So both applications then proceed to an approval activity. This could either be face-to-face or remote. I do just want to give you the heads up though, it will most likely be face-to-face unless you are management administration. With all other qualifications, we do have to consider equipment and health and safety, and therefore the TQA does need to come out to the centre. So once the TQA has supported you and reviewed everything with you, they will send a report with their recommendations to quality delivery. We will then review and make a final decision about whether to approve or not approve your application. And we will then communicate this to you. So before we continue, Joe, was there any more questions you wanted us to pick up?
Yeah, I've just got 2 for you, Hannah. A provider are planning on running the agriculture, crop and livestock qualification in September, but are then planning to run the other options at a later date. Do they apply for approval for everything in one application or just apply for the qualifications they're planning for September 23?
No, so what we ask is if you know you're not planning to deliver it in that academic year, please do not apply. The only reason for that is, as I mentioned earlier, if you haven't delivered it within 2 years, you just have to go for the approval process again. And also, even if it was just 1 year of deferring, we'd still need to go for your action plan again. So it creates more work for you guys, really. However, If you did apply for it because at the time you had all intentions of delivering it that year and then had to defer, for example, because you couldn't recruit the learners or for whatever reason, that is fine, and we will note that you were approved but deferred. But if you know you won't be delivering it, we do ask you not to apply until you need to, basically.
That's lovely, thank you. And the next one is, if a provider are looking to deliver in September 2024, do they start the approval process this time next year, or can they start this year?
No, so it'd be next year. So you would apply from February 2023 up until June, although we don't have the exact dates for next year yet.
Okay, that's perfect. That's it for now. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks, Jo. So I'm going to hand over to Laura now, and she's going to discuss some of the key resources we've got for T-levels.
Thank you, Hannah. So there are 3 key documents which will support you in completing your approval application. The Approval and Quality Assurance Guide will give information on the provider and qualification approval, the process itself, provider quality assurance monitoring, and registrations and bookings. The Technical Qualification Specifications give specific information for each qualification, which we will look at in a moment, and the application form itself. So all 3 documents can be found within the T-Level Resource Hub on the City and Guilds website. And as mentioned before, it would be recommended just to have a look through these, even if you can't apply just yet, just to get yourself known with them. If you are a current approved provider, it would be recommended to have another look at these documents, especially the approval application form, as some things have now changed. So the technical qualification specifications are provided for each individual qualification to give the provider all information that they need to deliver this qualification. So in detail, it will cover the structure, assessment methods and core content, occupational specialisms of the qualification, as well as any physical and staffing resources required. The technical qualification specifications can be found on the qualification pages on the website, and it is a very, very useful document to refer to from pre-approval right into delivery of the qualification. I would like to mention these documents are updated whenever there are any changes to the specifications of the qualification, so keep revisiting just to make sure you're up to date. So we're going to have a little look at the approval criteria for the qualifications. So providers should approach this as a self-assessment or confirmatory checklist to show whether you can meet the necessary criteria for approval. So each of the 7 criteria, which we will look at in a little bit more detail, you will need to confirm whether each is met by selecting yes, no, or part. Answering no or part does not mean that your application will be rejected. It could just mean that this area is not fully in place yet. For example, you're waiting on equipment delivery or you've got ongoing staff recruitment. It is important that you are completely honest in this section. If you don't have something fully in place, we would rather know about it and ask you to give a little bit more information on how you're going to resolve it. You'd look to expand on any areas where you've selected no or part within your self-assessment action plan, which we'll take a look at after we've gone through the criteria. So when we look through the criteria in detail in a moment, you will notice a magnifying glass over certain points. This will indicate areas which you will usually be asked to provide evidence for to confirm whether this criteria has been met or what is in place to ensure it will be met ahead of delivery. Please be aware that if a criteria does not have a magnifying glass over it, it doesn't mean that the TQA won't still ask for evidence. They could still ask for things just to clarify. And may I also add that this magnifying glass is not on the actual application form itself. It is just used in the presentation to highlight areas where you were likely to be asked for evidence. So City and Guilds do not expect you to be completely ready, but as long as you are honest within your application, the TQA can detail this on your action plan and support you to ensure that it's met in due course. As we go through these criteria, we'll look at both the full and extension forms and highlight where they differ and where they'll be the same. So the approval criteria itself, it is quite rigorous, and it is designed to ensure the integrity of the qualifications can be maintained for both City and Guilds and the Institute. These 7 criteria have been arranged with the Institute as part of City and Guilds approval to offer the qualifications. Please do not underestimate what is required, especially as part of the initial provider approval. So the application form first starts out by looking at who you are and what you're wanting to apply for. It'll then move on to the 7 approval criteria. This is management systems, industry placement, resources, delivery, assessment and standardisation plan, secure live assessment and administration, and any conflicts of interest. So the approval criteria themselves are mapped to the technical qualification specifications, and it will form the bulk of the self-assessment part of the application. It's worth reviewing this part of your application against the specifications for the qualification you're applying for. This just ensures that all areas are met, or if there's sufficient enough plans in place to meet them. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail for each of the criteria, and I'm going to pass you over to Maureen.
Thank you, Laura. So just as we said, we're going to look at the specific criteria now. We're going to go through this section of the application forms, and we're going to look at where it differs between full approval and the extension approvals. So the first criteria is management systems, criteria A. And as you can see in this slide, there's quite a big difference between the two of them. Now, criteria A is mainly used for provider approval. When you are applying for an extension, we don't need to reapprove everything. We really just need to check if nothing's changed. So, for example, if you have got new staff here, this may be where you might look at uploading the CVs to tell us we've got new staff. Where a provider is already approved with another awarding organisation for T-levels, a lot of the documentation that you'll have submitted for that application will be transferable, so you won't need to redo everything. However, please note that every awarding organisation is different and the criteria for approval can be different across them. So as you can see, we ask for a lot of detail here, but a lot of it is your policies and processes and your systems. What have you got in place for communication with staff, with students? What resources have you got for delivering, ensuring sufficient time and resources allocated to ensure effective delivery? Things like policies and procedures such as student recruitment, student and staff support, safeguarding equality and diversity and inclusivity, through to GDPR, risk assessments. This section A5 in particular is one that we will be looking for a lot of evidence to see these policies. But just make sure that everything's up to date to make sure that the qualification will run smoothly. And as I said, for the extension approval, has anything changed? So the next slide looks at the industry placement. Now, as we said, City and Guilds don't really get involved with this, but as part of the application, we will just ask to make sure what you've got in place with regards to policies and processes around this. And as you can see, the question is the same whether you're applying for full approval or the extension approval, because this is something that's going to be specific to each qualification that you offer. And mostly here it's looking at what risk assessment, health and safety, and ongoing quality assurance and monitoring of the placements that you have in place to make sure everything's going to work well and give the students the best experience. So the next criteria, criteria C, is looking at your resources. And again, this is qualification specific, so it's the same section on each application. And it's looking at both the physical resources and the staff resources. For those that applied last year and are looking at the extensions approval this year, this is one of the sections that we've changed. We have simplified it slightly, and we are now looking to make sure that you either have or will have the resources. As we know that some of these may not be available right away, for example, recruiting staff, but also that you're aware of the resources available to you. Please note, when we're discussing staff resources, while we do still accept CVs, we know that sometimes it's not always the most convenient thing to get hold of, especially for longer established staff. So for your convenience, we've also supplied a form that you can fill out, which is available on the website alongside the application forms. We would need one form per staff member, and it essentially asks for details of the qualifications, the past experience, and any CPD that is relevant to the qualification. it is a requirement that you either fill out this form or supply a CV, and these come under part of the evidence that you would upload to Learning Assistant, which is our secure document portal. One other thing that you might be required to supply evidence for is any third-party agreements, making sure that they're recorded, impact assessed and made available for review. So, for example, if you were delivering part of it in an off-site workshop. Now, to complete this section, it will be very useful to refer back to the technical qualification specification referenced above. So Hannah is now going to look at what we ask about delivery.
Thanks, Maureen. So criteria D is delivery. I'll mention here it does touch on schemes of work and curriculum plans. So the previous 2 years, we have asked providers to supply these. However, we do have these resources on our website now. You still are able to submit your own if you prefer, but you can also use ours. So if you do plan to use ours, we recommend you put yes in this box, as if the TQA does ask for evidence of this, you can explain that you'll be using a City and Guilds template. This section also touches on ensuring students are supported and that their individual needs are assessed. So it asks you to confirm that they will have regular checks on their progress and any support they need, and that they will receive a TQ handbook. As you can see, the handbook does have a magnifying glass over it, meaning that the TQA will definitely need this evidenced. But as Maureen mentioned earlier, just because it doesn't have a magnifying glass doesn't mean that we aren't able to ask for the evidence. So moving on to criteria E, that is assessment and standardisation plan. So basically this area asks you to confirm things such as that your internal assessors and key staff are all trained in line with the marking, standardisation and moderation guide we provide, that you have a detailed IQA plan as well as standardisation plan, and you will see this has a magnifying glass over it, and that the provider is able to identify any risk regarding internal assessors, IQAs, marking and standardisation. Moving on to criteria F, that is the secure live assessment and administration. So you can see here there are some differences between the full provider approval and the extension one. So the full provider approval is on the left there, and you can see here we're asking you to confirm you will comply with all the assessment requirements set out by City and Guilds. We also check there is procedures in place to identify any plagiarism, as well as procedures in place to monitor student attendance. The TQA will ask to see the examinations policy, and they need to ensure this meets City and Guilds and JCQ ICE requirements. We also ask you to have a detailed invigilation policy, again, that meets the City and Guilds and JCQ ICE requirements. And we ask the providers to confirm that all assessment locations are known to City and Guilds, and again, meet our requirements and the JCQ ICE. We also ask you to confirm all assessment materials will be stored and distributed securely. On the extension approval form, however, which you can see on the right there, we don't ask for quite as much detail. We do ask you to confirm nothing has changed in relation to your secure live assessment policies and procedures, as well as the assessment sites, any staff changes and changes to the storage and distribution of the assessment materials. We also check that your assessment locations are still known to City and Guilds. And finally, we check if you've received any sanctions from any other awarding organisations since provider approval, for example, following an exam audit. Please don't be put off letting us know about anything like that. It doesn't particularly mean you'll be rejected. We just need to know all detail that we can during your approval. So as you can see, there are some slight differences between the two forms, but I'm going to hand over to Laura now, and she is going to go through criteria G.
Thank you, Hannah. So criteria G covers conflict of interest. So conflict of interest is a situation in which a person or organisation is involved in multiple interests, financial or otherwise, and serving one interest could involve working against another. So, for example, a TQA would not be able to complete an approval at a centre that they work at. Now, usually this will already have been looked at prior to allocating any TQA to your centres, but should you notice any conflicts with your TQA after one has been allocated to you, please do let the quality team know and we can make this change. From a provider point of view, any conflict of interest would be where a marker would be assessing a close family member's papers or assessing any of their work. If this happens and if there is no other option than to use that particular marker, then you do need to contact City and Guilds so we can advise you further on this. I would stress that if you are unsure whether something constitutes as a conflict of interest, please do contact the quality team and we can advise you further. So the full approval questions in this area will confirm what you currently have in place or if there are any conflict of interest to make us aware of. And the extension approval is simply checking as to whether any of these details have changed since you last applied for either a full or a qualification approval. In both cases, please ensure as much detail is given as possible so that the quality team and the TQA can see where the conflict lies and we can advise on any further or extra steps required. So that covers all of the 7 criteria. Now, once you've gone through these criteria and selected your yes, no, or part, you will be able to determine which information needs to be detailed in the self-evaluation action plan. So if you've answered yes to any of these requirements, you do not need to expand on this in the self-assessment. Each criteria you have answered no or part is required to have its own line in this section. So each of the criteria does have its own unique reference number, which can be selected from the drop-down box to give details on your answer. So for example, as shown in the slide, part was selected for section A.5. So within the self-assessment, the reference is A.5. In here, you should detail why this criteria is not met or only part met, and what you are doing or going to do to ensure this is resolved prior to starting delivery of the qualification. So when this is reviewed, your TQA may be able to offer further guidance and support on how to do this when they attend for your approval activity. We do understand that you might not ever have everything in place at the start of your application, but as mentioned at the start of the section, it is important that you are very open and honest so that we can support you where we need to. So hopefully this will give you a little bit more of an insight of what to expect within the approval process. I'm going to pass you over to Maureen and she will run through the next steps.
Thank you, Laura. So we're coming towards the end of the webinar, so we're going to round up what happens next. We will be sending out a copy of the recording of this webinar if you need to go back over anything. And as Hannah said, the slides will be made available on the website. So if you need to go back over anything, you'll have that at hand. We would also invite you to book onto the next webinar, which will be held at the same time on Thursday, the 16th of February. This webinar will go into further detail about the completion of the approval application form and how to upload your evidence. You can either go on to the events and webinars section of the T-Levels website and you'll find a link there to register, or you can drop us an email and we'll be able to resend the invite out to you. You can now take some time to download and digest the information from the approval and quality assurance guide, the timelines, etc., and the application forms themselves. These key documents will help to familiarise you with everything that you need to do before submitting your application, which, as we said, you can do after the 27th of February. It may be advisable to ensure that any other staff involved with the technical qualifications review the technical qualification specification document. For example, if they're delivering the qualification or if they're involved in hiring staff to deliver it, to make sure that all the requirements are met. Once you are familiar with these documents, you'll be able to begin gathering any evidence which may be required to support your application, thus reducing any delays after submission. Now, as I mentioned, we do have the events and webinars tab on the website, and not only will you find the link to our next webinar, but you'll also find any other upcoming events held by technical advisors or by us to support you over the coming year. And if you do require any additional support sessions, these are available on request from the quality team. Now, you can get in touch with us between Monday to Friday between 8:30 to 5 o'clock. You can call on 0300 303 5352. You can drop us an email at technicals.quality@cityandguilds.com and one of us will get back to you. or if you'd rather use web chat, you can go onto the main T-Levels page on the website, and there should be a chat pop-up appears, red bar at the bottom right-hand side of the window. We'll pop these details back up on the screen at the end of the webinar if you want to take anything down. And I will pass you back over to Hannah, who will wrap everything up now.
Thanks, Maureen. I just wanted to touch on our contact update form. A few of you may have seen this before, but this is available on our T-Levels Support and Resource Hub on the City and Guilds website. I just need to stress that whenever you have a member of staff leave involved in T-Levels or a new one start who you want us to have on our database, we do need you to fill this contact update form out. Obviously, we don't want to be sending important information to people who have left your centre, just with GDPR risks. We also want to mention on this form, a lot of you will know it does ask for a T-level lead. We've had some difficulties in the past where the T-level lead we've had provided is someone that isn't really involved in the day-to-day of T-levels. So who that T-level lead should be is someone who can cover across all the T-levels you're delivering, someone who we can be in regular contact with via phone and email, and basically just someone that's happy to have day-to-day discussions with us regarding this, and someone who is available to be at any centre visits, such as your advisor visits. You'll know we also ask for an exams contact on there. We have found this really helpful in the past during the assessment series to get hold of those, so that's brilliant. But we're also happy to include industry contacts or anyone you think is applicable, such as a quality contact, whoever you would basically like us to be in touch with. Please note all documentation, such as reports, whether that's your approval report, your certificate, your advisory reports, they are all sent to your T-level lead. So please just note that is where they will be, and they don't particularly go to the curriculum staff. Also, just please be aware this form is only for T-level qualifications. General contact updates should be processed by a walled garden for any other qualifications, aside from technical qualifications, who also have their own form on the website. So we're just going to take one last chance to do a Q&A with Joe. But as I said earlier, please don't worry if we don't touch on your question. We are going to put together an FAQ document at the end of this and send it as soon as possible. So Joe, have you got any questions?
Yeah, I've got a few. First one being, if a provider gained approval last year but then deferred, do they need to reapply, or does that approval carry forward for them?
So the approval does carry forward if it's only been a year. If it's been 2 years, they'd need to reapply. However, we would need to ensure that their action plan was picked up last year. So if that particular provider could reach out to us, and we can look and see if their action plan needs redoing. But if it does, that's absolutely fine. They won't be sending an application form again. It's just that the TQA will touch in with them and basically check if those actions were ever ticked off.
Okay, thank you. And the next one is, if a provider are putting their approval application through in February, if it's unlikely that they finalise the curriculum resources, such as the student handbook, how do they deal with that around the approval application process?
So basically how it would work is you put your application in, which you can do in February, by the way, that's fine. It doesn't matter if you don't have anything, such as, well, everything, such as a qualification handbook. What we will do is we'd expect you to put that on your action plan and your application form. The TQA would do their visit. You would supply any evidence that you can in that 30 working days. Anything that is not supplied, the TQA will put on your visit report as an action. And basically, those actions must be signed off by the start of delivery. So essentially, your approval, you would be approved, but it's subject to that action plan being signed up. So they would contact you again before September and check your progress, check that everything is signed off. And please note, we have asked TQAs to avoid putting actions on there that are more relevant to, you know, later in the year or the second year. We just want them to be focused on getting you started through delivery.
Thank you. And how should a provider deal with staff changes if that occurs after they've made the application?
That's fine. So all you'd need to do is contact us. If you just email technicals.quality@cityandguilds.com. And what we would do is we'd ask you to either fill out one of our staff forms or submit a CV. that would go back to the learning assistant like you have done with your approval, and our TQA would review it. Please do note though, if staff changes before you start delivery or even during delivery, we can't guarantee that those staff will be qualified to deliver. So if they don't meet up to our staffing requirements, there is always, that does put your approval at risk basically. So please ensure that they do still meet the requirements.
Lovely, thank you. And finally, a provider is asking how will they be notified of the outcome of their approval application?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So how we would do that is we will send you an email, and on that email will be an approval letter. It'll either be a full approval letter or a qualification one, depending on your circumstances. If it is a full approval, there'll also be a certificate on there, basically saying that you were able to deliver T levels with City and Guilds. If it's an extension, you should have received that certificate either last year or the year before. And there'll also be a copy of your report. We do ask that you really do read that report through carefully, as like we said, any actions will be picked up before September, or potentially on your advisory visit, which takes place between January and March. But yeah, we can't stress enough, those action plans do need to be signed off for September. Unfortunately, next year you won't be able to register your learners until they're signed off.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Hannah. That's everything.
Brilliant, thank you, Joe. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stick this slide back on with our contact details, and I'll leave that running for a few minutes, although I'm sure most of you probably have them. But other than that, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We really hope you found this beneficial and helpful. As discussed earlier, please do try and sign up for our second webinar on the Thursday, the 16th of February. That webinar is going to touch a little bit further on the approval process, and we are going to have a demonstration from Jenny on how to upload your evidence to Learning Assistant, which is very, very helpful. But otherwise, like I said, I will keep this running for another couple of minutes. Please do send any questions to the Technicals Quality team, and we hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.